In this video, I'm going to be discussing the 5 parts of projects that I've identified and that I've found most helpful in my practice as a teacher. Specifically, this is for implementing projects that integrate technology and also address content area standards. So let's jump right in. Here are the 4 phases that I usually run through in a project. There's a research phase, a gathering phase, a building phase, and a publishing phase. And running across all of that is collaboration between students. Let's start by talking about research. Every project is going to have a research component, so students have to find information that's going to address the questions that they're trying to answer. Okay? So what you want to ask is, how are you going to collect and organize information? At a very young level, they may be using a worksheet, and they may be using books, or you may be giving them the websites that they're going to go to find information. At an older level, students are going to be finding their own information. And then within that, you're going to have to build in some skills. So if you're not talking about how do we find the right information, how do we search, how do we evaluate that the sources of our information are reliable, or identify bias in them, you're really missing an opportunity to develop some of those digital literacy skills with your students. Once you've done your research and your students have learned everything they need to learn to complete the project, now you're going to start gathering resources. Now, there's all kinds of resources depending on the different kinds of projects. So, for example, if you're doing an audio podcast, they might be collecting interviews from experts or from people that have different perspectives. If you were doing a slideshow or a presentation, they might be gathering images that they're going to use. They could be taking pictures or videoing. At the very beginning, when you start doing these kinds of projects with your students, you're going to look for ways to simplify this gathering phase. You're going to find, let's say, tools that will find the images for them or have like an integrated search. You're going to use tools that will abstract away a lot of the problems that you have with gathering. But as your students mature and as your understanding of how a project goes improves, you're going to find ways to build in new skills that you think are interesting or useful for your students. For example, image editing or more advanced audio recording techniques in video. There's a whole world of artistic and technical skills that you may want your students to acquire, but aren't really the focus of what it is that you're trying to do. And now we get to the build phase. This is your hook. This is what your students are going to be excited about when you announce your project. So you're going to tell them, we're going to make a video, and that's going to get them really jazzed up. And they're going to start thinking about filming and props and all this other stuff, and you're going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. We're not getting to that stuff until you learn, research, plan, learn some other technical skills. And that's for you how the project is going to become valuable. For them, it's all about the build, though. And the build is a great place to rely on your tech coordinator or your tech coach, someone who really knows the kinds of products and what the issues are going to be with creating various projects. They're going to have some ideas about, oh, well, if you want to make a video, for example, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to record in a way that all the kids' voices aren't on top of each other. And they're going to know what skills are going to be needed. So if you want to create a newsletter, they're going to be able to help you choose a software that's developmentally appropriate, and also maybe create a template for them that's going to ease some of those technical skills. Okay, great. So you have researched, you've gathered all your materials, you've built some kind of product. Now the question is, how are you going to publish it? And this is critical because unlike something like an essay or a quiz or a test, these kinds of projects are really designed to be shared with as wide an audience as possible. You can get so much out of your students if you tell them that they're going to be able to send their project around the world to their grandmother or their cousins, and then it's going to be published in a place where they might actually be able to have an impact. Video is a great example of this. If you tell kids that their stuff is going to go on YouTube and kids from around the world are going to be able to see it, and they could actually help educate people or even make a difference in how a social issue is perceived, you can really get incredible work out of your students. This also provides a really natural and real place to talk about issues of copyright and safety on the internet, because you're going to be putting something out there and you have to ask, okay, well, what does it mean if my face or my voice is in this and we publish it? Who do we have to ask for permission? Do we have permission to use somebody else's work in our projects? So by publishing, you bring in a lot of those concerns that are important to kids understanding digital citizenship. And running through this entire process is the question of how I'm going to establish a collaborative environment for students and how I'm going to facilitate their collaboration. So first question is, what are the size of the groups going to be? Most of the projects I do are either working in pairs or in groups of 4. This allows you to have a reasonable number of final products at the end while having really well-defined roles for each student. The next thing I think about is how am I going to support team building and actually teach conflict resolution skills during the project. So one strategy that I use is I try to discourage kids from voting, because in a very small group, let's say you have 3 kids that want to do something one way and one wants to do something another way, and they vote on it and that one kid loses out, that kid isn't engaged in the project anymore. So I teach them about how to kind of find a solution that everyone's going to be able to live with, and so that everybody can feel invested in the project. And finally, having really clear roles and jobs for each individual student is going to help you to actually assess at the end whether or not everybody contributed and did their job. I also think it's important to provide sort of a high-level, high-skilled role and low-skilled roles within each team. That way, all of your students are going to be able to contribute regardless of their performance level. So those are the questions that I tend to grapple with in a project, and I hope you found this guide helpful. Please let me know what you think in the comments.